week about how to conduct yourself in an interview, and you brought up the possibility of there being room for improvement in second interviews. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
I think if you get called back for a second interview, you need to deepen your research. You need to, in fact, follow up with the person that has asked you to come back to the second interview and say, is there anything I should be thinking about? I talked also last week about preparing questions for the second and possibly third interviews. The questions are not about how much leave you get and what your salary is going to be. It needs to be broader in terms of what your role is going to be, what kind of contribution you can make, and how what your current experience is or inexperience. It might be that you simply have the qualifications but you don't have experience, will enable you to grow and develop in that role, and what you believe will bring to that role. And your questions need to be pointed in that way. And there, if you go and Google the sort of questions you should ask in an interview, there are thousands. Sit down and look at them and say, you might not ask them, but one of the people that impressed me the most in recent weeks when we did interviews is after we'd really unpacked the company, told him everything, he said, you know, you've answered some of my questions, and then he opened up his book and he had more. Yes. So even though we'd answered quite a few, and then he pointed out to us some of the questions he'd planned to ask that we'd already answered, so that we knew that he'd thought about. This is a guy who's applying for a senior role. And that to me it was very important. And that added a lot of value to that interview process, because I knew he wanted to be part of us, and I knew that he was prepared to put the time in to show me that.
I think I was also very impressed by that. And he had thought about how he could add value to our organization. So it wasn't just a question of it's a job and I need a job. It was, this company's objective is to do A, and I'm going to be able to contribute to that by doing these things that I've already thought through. Yeah.
So what we're really saying is, use your first interview and the time between interview 1 and interview 2 to ensure that you have grown between 2 interviews, that you can now add more to the interview rather than less because it's already been explained to you. And that, I think, from a second interview point of view, is the differentiator. You might get the job and somebody else might, because often I hear in a second interview when I say, well, they didn't come across that well, but they were so good in the first interview. And I think, what happened between the first and the second interview? And so I think that's a very, very important part of it, Kathy.
Thank you.